I got my first job in 2003, immediately after graduating high school. I spent that summer before college working at a fast food restaurant and playing video games, and I used my first paycheck to buy a GameCube and a copy of Metroid Prime. Maybe not the most responsible use of my money, but money well spent nonetheless. Having released that previous fall, Prime would go on to be not only a landmark entry in the series, but one of the best examples of how you can take an established franchise and reinvent it while still retaining its core identity. The same way that a lot of folks feel towards the revolution that Super Mario 64 and Ocarina of Time brought to their respective franchises and genres, I feel Prime ushered in for the Metroid series as a whole. At the time, I remember seeing a magazine comparing it to the original Halo and Killzone. All three of these games would go on to hold a large space in the gaming world for the early 2000s. And while Killzone faded into the background after a few sequels, and Halo came to dominate the genre, Metroid Prime definitely cemented itself as an incredible example of not just an FPS, but what a reimagining of an older IP done right could actually be. Despite its 8-bit roots, it proved it could hold its own among other giants. Much like the rest of the internet, I just about lost it when the remaster Shadow dropped after the most recent Nintendo Direct. After years of rumors and a lot of speculation around the status of Prime 4, I didn't expect at the start of the week that I'd be playing this classic on my Switch by the weekend. Initially hesitant given what Nintendo did with Super Mario 3D All-Stars, I've been pleasantly surprised playing through what has proven to be a masterpiece all over again. Visuals. The dedication and time taken with this game shows. Right from the title screen, you know that this is going to be worth it. A lot of us have rose-tinted glasses when it comes to how we think our games used to look. But this remaster looks exactly like my distorted opinion of the original in my head. Much like my last video on the Dead Space remake, all of the same boxes were checked by Retro Studios and Iron Galaxy Studios. Character models and textures were given much needed overhauls, and while the lighting remains less than the current gen expectations, it looks far better than the original, and it shows in every encounter and environment. Rather than a conventional collectathon, Metroid Prime has you interact with hundreds of points of interest across the entire map. Right from the get-go, you'll be scanning things like there's no tomorrow, and you'll need to if you want to understand how to proceed and even how to defeat certain enemies. With such little dialogue, scanning items and reading logs from the space pirates are your primary methods of learning the story of what's happening on the planet Talon 4. Now, if you're impatient like me, you might get a little frustrated with how much time this takes, but it's definitely worth it to expand and fully understand the world around you. The combat does freeze when you scan a new enemy to find their weak spot, but only after the scan is complete and you're reading the results. The first few moments of scanning, the enemies can still fire or melee, so that part does feel a bit exposed or dangerous. Honestly though, don't let that deter you from scanning as much as you can. Getting to learn the backstory of the Chozo when most Metroid games were light on story up until this point was a real treat, and helps contextualize newer games in the series like Dread. Controls. This is easily where this game has improved the most. For those not familiar, the original game did not use the conventional dual analog stick format that you'd expect from an FPS. Instead, it relied heavily on a lock-on system, since you use the same stick for movement and aiming. If you went back and played the original today, you'd be frustrated, especially if you went in expecting modern controls. And here, the remastered version does not disappoint. Implementing a dual analog stick setup by default, you've still got options for traditional controls, pointer controls, or a hybrid version if you prefer. Many folks have described the original as clunky, and I think that's 100% accurate. It's honestly what held back more replays in my opinion. The re-release version found on the Wii in Metroid Prime Trilogy implemented pointer controls, but honestly I've never been a fan. This standardized version really brings the game into modern day. Excitement for Prime 4. Recently I've been playing through Pikmin 3 Deluxe, and realize how last gen that game feels, especially when compared to the footage of Pikmin 4 at this Direct. If you're not sure what I mean, Pikmin 3 is definitely a little claustrophobic, and while it spans a large area, the world and screen feel cramped, like you're perpetually zoomed in. Watching the footage for 4, you can definitely see how much the world looks opened up and more expansive, more zoomed out, but still filled in. Metroid Prime 1 is in that same boat, with large areas to explore, but a distinct claustrophobic attitude. It is a product of its time and the limits of its original hardware. But if they can dress up a 20-year-old game and make it look and feel this good, I can't even begin to imagine how good Prime 4 could be. And with Retro Studios at the helm, I don't have any concerns. Keep taking your time if it means it's going to be amazing. a new generation. Maybe you're like me and played through Metroid Prime when you were a kid. Or maybe you're young enough that your parents played through it as kids themselves. If that's the case, then I hope this remaster makes what is an incredible game more accessible and available to a larger audience. Like I said, I have fond memories of the game and that time in my life, so to play it like it was new again is a gift I didn't know I could be given. Many outlets at the time of the original's release gave the game 9s and 10s, with a Metacritic score of 97. This remaster lives up to that legacy, and if you ask me, is easily a 9 out of 10. My gripes are very small. Scanning can still be a chore, and there aren't really any autosave spots like you'd expect. They also could have redone the map just like they did in the Dead Space remake. But besides that, it's nearly perfect. Some people on social media have told me that they didn't see enough differences to merit playing this, and I have to say, they're completely wrong. There's no way you look at the original and think it looks anywhere near as good as this version. At $40, it's a bargain and a must-have. If you've been waffling about whether it's worth playing, or if a 20-year-old game can keep your attention for long enough to beat it, this is me telling you that you will not regret it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.